Okay, I think we can go ahead and start. So welcome everyone to the first of our series of our Threatened Afghan Students and Scholars speaker series that we are initiating today. There will be one a month throughout this academic year. It is something we have wanted to do for some time, but we were not able to in the past. To introduce myself, my name is Julia Rente. I am a project officer in the Threatened Students and Scholars program at the Global Campus of Human Rights. For those who are joining today who are not affiliated with or know who we are, the Global Campus of Human Rights is a network of now about 100 universities around the world. Our primary focus is human rights education with a human rights master's. That is our biggest focus and our biggest program. In addition to that, we also do different capacity building and training programs. One of those programs specifically is our Threatened Afghan Students and Scholars program, which is primarily a scholarship program for students and scholars who had to stop or could not even begin their higher education in some way connected with human rights because of the fall of Kabul and the Taliban and everything that happened 2 years ago in August of 2021. To date, we have assisted 33 individuals, and many of them, as well as their families, to be affiliated with one of the universities in our network with support as well as our wider network. In addition to the scholarship program, we do different training and program aspects, and today is one of those. So a few housekeeping things before I do go over the agenda and our two wonderful speakers for today. As usual, please do keep yourself on mute so we do not have any background noise or any interruptions. As was asked in the registration, this webinar will be recorded. It is recording already. If you do have any problems or worries about privacy, please let us know in the chat, or if you do have any worries, you are welcome to keep your video off, because of course we do not want to put anyone at risk. That is something, of course, that connects directly to the program, so we want to be very conscious of that. So what today will be, as you saw in our agenda and that was sent out, it will be a focus on education. I want to add something to that, because there are two themes that we will discuss today, which are connected and also separate. So first is the attack on the Kaj Educational Center, and also the idea of the attack on education in general in Afghanistan. I say connected and separate because, as I have recently learned, and I want to make sure I spotlight and highlight this, is that the Kaj Educational Center attack was more than just education. It is a continued attack specifically directed at the Hazara, and I want to really specify that extra element. It is a systemic issue that uses education and education centers to specifically attack. Apologies as a reminder again, if everyone can keep their device on, or we can go ahead and which we will do now. So as last week was the 1-year anniversary of the Kaj Educational Center attack on September 30th, we of course did want to spotlight this. It was a major attack, it was a recent attack, and it had a lot of elements that connected with it. And it was the 1-year anniversary. And for this, we have Fatima Amiri here, who will give a testimonial on this. She will be our first speaker. And then we will have a 1 minute of silence as a memorial for the other victims and survivors of the attack. And then after this beginning session, we'll move into the topic of the general attack on education in Afghanistan, for which we have Dr. Yahia Baiza, who is an expert on this topic and has written extensively about it. I will give a more in-depth bio about him before he presents. And at this time, I would like to turn the floor over to Ms. Fatima Amiri. Fatima, the floor is yours.
First of all, in the name of Allah, hello everyone. Hope you are keeping well and spend wonderful time. As you know, I am Fatima Miri, one of the injured students of Kaji Education Center. And at the same time, I can proudly identify myself as an advocate and a staunch proponent of I'm sorry.
Take your time.
Okay. I proudly identify myself as an advocate and a staunch proponent of education, while simultaneously acknowledging that I have personally encountered challenges within the education system. If we want to speak about those days, those days was like another days. It was Friday, and we had the entrance exam. I wake up early, and when I received our education center, it was not yet fully light, and it was dark because it was so ear. I started to solve the questions. My friends come one after the other. Suddenly we heard sound. It was so loud, like it was gone. Because it was not my first time. I hear this sound a lot of time when I was in school, when I was in education center, all time. But I thought that it should be like another accident. It should not be anything. We shouldn't be so frightened. I stand up and started to calm down the class, and I say that please be calm and don't fright. It's nothing. But when I saw my past, I saw a young man with a face full of angry looking at me. He wanted to shoot me with gun. I fried and sit down. After that, I can't feel anything, and it was a very loud sound, and I thought that maybe I'm not alive because I couldn't see anything. At those time, I lost it, my left eye and my left ear. And but when I tried to see with my eye, with my right eye, I saw the very bad things that I can't say for you that it was like that. Like what? You know, I saw my friends that with their dead bodies. I hear the sound that they say, "Please help me." You know, at our school, all day was the sound of our study. Always we repeat our lesson together, and suddenly this sound changed, and only thing that I couldn't hear, I could hear, it was, please help me, please help me. Not one person, all of my friends, my classmates was with blood. And my second home, those places that became second home for me, my education center, I saw that destroyed. And I couldn't find any way to get out of that place because around me was my friends with their dead bodies. I couldn't to gone to feed with them and get out of that place. It was very hard for me, and I couldn't find any way to get out of that place. But I tried to get out, and I saw the closed gate. The gate was closed, and I had to climb on the wall. the wall was with wire, and my injured become more than before. My feet, my hands, my clothes, all of them tears. And when I received the outside, when I said that please help me, all person afraid me, all of them afraid of me. And I thought that maybe my head is not in my body, because all of them so afraid of me. But the blood, the burns, the all things become afraid of them to me. And with my dose said, I received in the hospital, and one day I passed to operation. I went to 5 hospital, and most of them didn't accept me, because they didn't have enough facilities.
Connection.
I passed to operation, and the difficulties was that I couldn't feel, and I feel everything from the beginning until the end. I saw all things, I feel everything, and I hear everything. After that, I can't hear, I can see, and even I couldn't to eat anything. I couldn't to eat anything, because my broken on my face, broken, my bone on my face broken completely. At those attack, I lost my all friends, and right now I don't have any friends of those class. Right now I lost my left eye and my left ear, and all doctors said that you can't see anymore with your left eye, you can't hear with your left ear anymore, because it's completely damaged. Those people that was on that were on those class, all of them was so strong, because we spent a lot of difficulties at those years. It was quarantine, our governments changed, a bad economic situation, our security was very bad, our schools closed, and we couldn't do anything. Only we tried to continue, but finally they die. I'm right now like this. But after that, I try to continue, because I promised to my friends those days. I said that your wish can't finish with your die bodies. If I survive, I will make your wish come true. And right now, I after that, I with my a lot of pain, with my my mind was worried, my body was completely damaged, my eye, my ear. With those state, I spent the entrance exam or conquer exam. I spent it, and it made it to my favorite file, computer science. But unfortunately, right now, I can't go to university, because they closed our university, and they don't let us to go to our university. We spend a lot of difficulties, we spend a lot of I lost my left eye and my left ear because education, because university. But right now I can't go to university, it's very hard for me. But I will don't give up, and I will try to find a way, and I will study, and I will do something for my friends that right now they are not alive. And for girls that are in a very bad situation, they can't go university, they can't go school. It's very hard for me. It's more than 2 years that girls in Afghanistan can't go to university. It's like this is not another country around the world, but no one care them. No one speak about them. It's no one help them. When I speak with them, they cry and send me message that what we should do. Education was only thing that we had, but right now we can't do something. We can't go university, we can't go school, even picnic and going outside is very hard for them. We spend a lot of difficulties because of education. A lot of person die because of education and because of university, but still now we don't let you. We can't go to university. It's and it is very very interesting for me because I don't know because of what reason we can't go. What's the reason? I can't find, because in our religion, in our community, in our families, it's not like that we can't go to university. It's really interesting and new things for us, but I don't know. Thank you so much for hearing.
No, thank you for being with us and sharing your story. I know it is not easy.
But
No, of course it's not something easy always to talk about. But of course, bringing awareness and bringing a real person, it helps people understand more about what happened. I can't say why it happened, because your one thing you just said right there, what is the reason? You know, why can't we? And that is the big question. What is going on? What is the reason? Why are we being prevented? You know, of course, there is like the one side of, you know, the Hazara and the systemic attacks against them. And we know, of course, the Taliban have their own issues with that. And then the women's issue. Why? Why are they being fully removed from not just education, but all of society? I mean, it is true gender apartheid happening. And so this is something, of course, everyone needs to be aware of and push and understand and advocate against. So we thank you for your testimony for that. And with that, before we do move on, in honor of, number one, you being here, but in honor of your classmates, your friends who could not go on, we would like to have a 1 minute of silence in honor of them, and then everyone else, of course, being affected or who has already been killed by the Taliban. In honor of that, in the background, just give me 1 moment, everyone, so we can have it there. There we go. I have, in honor of everyone, if everyone else is silent, but we will give 1 minute in memory of everyone. I will let us know when the minute is finished. Thank you. Thank you all. So just as a quick reminder before we do transition into the second part of this, for those who only joined while Fatima was speaking, just a quick reminder of what the session is, because I know a few did enter in the middle, and I, of course, did not want to interrupt Fatima. We are right now discussing, we're moving into now the idea of the general attack of education on Afghanistan. We just had a very touching and moving testimonial from Fatima Amiri, who was one of the survivors of the Kaj Educational Center attack, which of course brings up so many different questions and wondering what the reason was. And I will reiterate what I just said before to her. What is the reason? And this is, I know, such a big question. So now moving into our second part of this program, I'd like to introduce Dr. Yahia Baiza, which I'm very honored to hear speak. I was very, very impressed when I saw his bio when he was recommended as a speaker on this topic. He holds a PhD in education and is a senior research associate at the Institute of Ismaili Studies in London, and also is the author of more than 80 academic articles. He specializes in education, Islamic, Central Asian, and Afghanistan studies, refugee and diaspora communities in Europe, and Persian manuscript analysis. Additionally, he serves as a Bloomsbury Education and Childhood Studies Regional Editor for Afghanistan. And through his work as an educationist and international educational consultant, he has been part of and contributed to many different educational projects, from curriculum and textbook development to general and major educational policy and planning. In 2020-2021, at the request of the Office of the First President of Afghanistan, he conducted a textual analysis of the latest draft law on technical and vocational education and training. And he's also offered recommendations on how to improve this law. He's also served as the national representative of the UNESCO International Institute for Education Planning at the Ministry of Education, and also helped the ministry develop its first 5-year national education strategic plan. This was back in 2006 to 2010. And it just continues to do amazing work in this field. And so with that, Dr. Baiza, it is an honor to have you here, and the floor is yours. If you can unmute yourself, sir.
Hello to everyone, and thank you, Julia, for generous introduction, and also thank you for inviting me to the monthly speaker series at Global Campus of Human Rights. It's a pleasure to be here. Also, it's a pleasure to meet Fatima Amiri virtually. Fatima, your story is very heart-touching and moving, yet your bravery and courage to pursue your education in such a situation is exemplary. I can't find words to describe it. Just all I can say is to wish you the very, very best for everything what you do, and I hope that and I'm sure that you will have a bright future, and this dark chapter will be over, not only just for you, but for everybody else. Thank you for sharing your story. Just to give you my talk about education under attack in Afghanistan, I prepared a PowerPoint presentation to which I'm going to share with you, but sometimes I will stop sharing as well, and I'll come back to that as well. So just give me a second just to share this PowerPoint presentation. Can everyone see this PowerPoint?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And education is a fundamental right that should be accessible to all individuals, regardless of the gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status. However, in war-torn countries like Afghanistan, this basic right is under severe threat. The education system in Afghanistan has been plagued with numerous challenges that hinder access to quality education for its population. And in this presentation, I will delve into 3 key issues that are contributing to the attacks on education in Afghanistan. Firstly, the lack of access to education, and secondly, gender inequality within Afghanistan education system, and lastly, physical threat to education. On lack of access to education in Afghanistan, it's a pressing concern, and many children and young adults are unable to attend schools due to various factors such as poverty, cultural barriers, and security concerns. This lack of access perpetuates a cycle of poverty and illiteracy and ignorance within the society, hindering overall development and progress. Gender inequality within Afghanistan's education system poses a significant obstacle, especially for girls seeking an education. Discriminatory cultural norms and practices, limited opportunities for girls' education, resulting in significantly lower enrollment rates compared to boys. And this gender parity not only denies girls' right to learn, but also perpetuates societal inequalities and restricts women's empowerment. On the schools under threat, and it's not just schools, but teachers, students have become target of violence in Afghanistan's volatile environment. And what we heard from Fatima Amiri is just one example. But if you look at over the past 40 years, as I will refer to those in this presentation, we will see many, many such examples. Armed groups actively target educational institutions as they perceive them as symbols of Western influence or platforms for spreading ideas contrary to their extremist ideologies. Coming to the inequalities in gender and social classes, it is important to note that the education in Afghanistan, right from modern education in Afghanistan, right from its inception in 1902 and 1903, has begun with inequalities in terms of gender. When Amir Habibullah established a modern school for the country, at that time, religious and tribal chiefs vehemently opposed out-of-home education for girls, believing that the out-of-home education would dilute girls' morality. And while boys were admitted to modern schools only, but lack of access did not allow all boys to be admitted to school. And the first modern school, the School of Habibia, those who are familiar with the history of education in Afghanistan, was mainly for the elite and not for the ordinary citizens. Similarly, social class has been a major barrier and a major issue in accessing education. For example, the government from 1912 to 1917 stopped education at Habibia School, and the only reason that they were given that there were not enough students for the secondary level. So, but my reading of the history is that it was not just the lack of students, but mainly because it was a school for the elite. So since there were not enough elite students, so the government simply suspended education. But when we come to the time of King Amanullah, he established the first girls' school and named it Masturat. Masturat is a very interesting term because literally it means pious veiled woman. Also, this was a title that was given to princess of that time. And so pious veiled woman, it itself shows that how much religious and tribal chiefs at that time were negatively perceiving out-of-home education for girls. But even with at this Masrad school, which was governed outside the Ministry of Education of the time by Queen Suraya, King Amanullah's wife, even this school was not accessible to all girls, and social class was a major issue. Just let me give you an example because I need to move fast forward to the present time as well. The school was initially housed at the home of a former minister. When the number of students grew up, then it was moved to the former residence of Amanullah's grandmother in the area called Deh Afghanan, in the city center next to the Ministry of Education. Those who are familiar with the Kabul city. So just looking at the location of the school, that is a home of former minister and King Amanullah's grandmother's residence. So this itself says that access to this school was just limited to royal class. And the picture that you see, girls departing to Turkey, secondary school girls departing to Turkey in early 1928. So these are also girls that belong to the elite class of Afghanistan society. Even though the Constitution 1924 declared education compulsory for all, but we all know that such legislation did not have any significant impact on education, even in the Kabul city itself, let alone in rural and urban areas. So therefore, there is also a geographical inequality next to gender inequality and class inequality. And those who lived and those who still are in rural areas had little access to education, and almost 70% of all educational resources were concentrated in Kabul. So these are some of the examples that when we talk about education under attack, to which I will come to physical threats and attacks as well, but education under attack is not necessarily bombing and terrorism, but also it involves many other forms that stops people accessing education. And just one final example of this access to education, when King Muhammad Nadir came to power in November 1928, he recalled these girls from Turkey, and he made the wearing of veil mandatory, and he basically closed all girls' educational opportunities. The only school for girls that was available was midwifery school, and education for girls resumed only in 1948 when UNESCO entered the field of education in Afghanistan. So gender inequality in Afghanistan education system is a deeply rooted issue that perpetuates discrimination and hampers the development of the country. Women and girls face numerous barriers that restrict their access to education, limiting their opportunities for personal growth and education independence. Also, cultural norms and societal expectations and security concerns have created an environment where educational opportunities for females are severely limited. And this marginalizes women from developing and from attaining their dreams, their educational and scientific and other cultural careers. And even today, when we look among the Taliban and their like-minded groups, traditional gender roles dictate that women should prioritize domestic responsibilities over education. These deeply ingrained in the cultural beliefs of so many people and perpetuates the notion that women's primary role is within the confines of their homes, reinforcing an unequal power dynamic between men and women. And of course, over the past 40 years, and even today, more than any time, security concern, especially in rural areas, posed significant challenges for female students in Afghanistan education system. The ongoing conflict in the country has led to attacks on schools and educators, creating an atmosphere of fear and instability. Coming to the physical threats and targeting schools and teachers in Afghanistan, as has already been shown in the earlier slide, physical threats on education reform refer to any form of danger or harm that can hinder the learning process and compromise the safety of students, teachers, and staff within the educational institutions. We should not also forget that societal and social issues often spill over into educational settings. Schools often reflect the problems present in the wider society, whether it's poverty or discrimination or it's political issues dictate the situation in Afghanistan. If you look at the 1978 era onwards, we see how societal and political issues in educational settings reflect the bigger international and national as well as regional political context. Just to be very brief on this matter, because I'm sure many of you are familiar, in the late 1970s, three major issues happened, or three major political changes, or even you can call it revolutions, happened in and around Afghanistan. One was July 1977, when General Muhammad Ziaul Haq staged a military coup against Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And then Zia executes Bhutto through a controversial court sentence in April 1977. At the same time, we see that in 1978, we have this military coup in Afghanistan, which sometimes are called revolution, when the leftist party, People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, came to power. So a year after that, we see Khomeini returns from Paris to Iran, and he is declared the supreme leader, and he overthrows the king in Iran and declares Iran an Islamic republic. So these three major political changes in and around Afghanistan had enormous impact on everything that from now onwards would unfold in Afghanistan, and everything that unfolds in Afghanistan has a direct impact on education and access to education, quality of education, and everything else. So in December 1979, when the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan is reaching the verge of collapse, then the Soviet army invades Afghanistan and saves the party from collapsing. But actually what happens, the party has survived, but actually Afghanistan has moved from one crisis to another crisis. And when I say crisis, I often also talk that education in Afghanistan reflects the perpetual state of crisis, political crisis. And that's why also this political crisis has a direct impact on educational crisis. So education in Afghanistan over the past 40, 50 years is in a perpetual state of crisis. The country does not come, and its education does not come out of one crisis before it enters into another crisis. So what happened from the Soviet invasion onwards, the national conflict that was within the country's borders between the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan and the so-called jihadi parties of that time, it becomes an international it's escalated at an international level. So basically, the Soviet invasion internationalized the national conflict in Afghanistan. So we see the rivalry between the United States and the former Soviet Union. The United States was primarily interested to defeat and roll back the Soviet empire from the gate of South Asia. So at the same time, we see proxy wars between Pakistan and India, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, all wanting to influence politics in Afghanistan. And then this politicization or this internationalization of Afghanistan conflict becomes again a national issue. So once that national conflict becomes international, international conflict becomes national. So the way that Soviet Union were fighting the United States, Saudi Arabia, Iran. So these are further translated into Sunni and Shia divide in Sunni and Shia rivalry, radical Sunnis versus moderate Sunnis, Pashtun versus non-Pashtuns, the way that we had over the past 20 years, the narrative of radical Taliban against the moderate Taliban. So what we have today in Afghanistan are the so-called moderate Taliban. So a similar narrative were developed throughout the past 40 years, Pakistan versus India, and then the ethnicities were divided among themselves, that Pashtuns, again, non-Pashtuns, Pashtuns within themselves were further divided between Ghilzai Pashtun and Durrani Pashtuns, pan-Islamists versus nationalists. So all this, what happens is just to give a little bit of the context within which education in Afghanistan taking place. While the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan is following a Marxist-Leninist ideological orientation and promoting the oppressed classes, especially religious and ethnic minorities and women, at the same time, education becomes very much politicized. So in a way, when we talk about violence against education, in a way, when we talk threats against education, it's not always physical, but there's also in the form of curriculum, in the form of textbooks, in the form of narratives that are presented to students. And at the same time, while on this side, on the side of the government, the Soviet Union is supporting all these measures in the government. On the other side, we see the rise of what I termed often in my books and articles as well about jihad education, or sometimes also war education. This jihad or war education primarily developed in the soil of Pakistan for the jihadi parties and for the refugees of Afghanistan, but generally for all children who would one day access these textbooks, to which I will come now. So the jihadi parties were heavily involved in this politicization of religious and madrasa education, but as I will show you now, it was not just politicization of religious madrasas, but also militarization of religious education. So what happens that in 1983, 1984, when the loss of jihadi fighters is too high, so there is a fear that there won't be many more jihadis to fight on the front lines against the Soviet Union. So at this time, not only that a global call for jihad happens, so this is for the first time that in the history of jihad that we see a global call for jihad or global jihad, because previously jihad was only within the borders, national borders, whether it was Palestine, whether it was Egypt, whether it was Saudi Arabia or any other country. But now we have a global call for jihad, that jihadis from all over the world are coming to Pakistan, gaining training, and are transferred to Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet Union and the central government. So what happens at this time, that United States Aid for International Development provides $50 million in 1984 to the University of Nebraska at Omaha to lead a new curriculum, which is often, I call it also jihad education or jihad curriculum. So in this jihad curriculum, which was developed by the education department of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, with the support of the government of Pakistan and the Middle Eastern countries or the Gulf countries and the jihadi parties in Pakistan. So, for example, you see that this alphabet that I'll show you a bit of example, that Aleph is Allah. These textbooks were mostly in Pashto, but also they are in Persian. For example, here a child learns that Te is for Topak. Topak means gun, and Te is for Torah, which means sword, that Ahmad has got a sword and he fights with the sword. Or for example, my uncle has got a gun and he does jihad with the gun. So these are some of the things that I just mentioned to you. So these textbooks were developed to teach children from the early ages so that by the time they become like 16, 17 years and can carry on a gun, so they can go and fight against the Soviet Union. So I often give an example of Sirajuddin Haqqani. He was born on December 1979, the day that the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. By the time he becomes 5-6 years old, these education programs were developed for madrasas. So people like Sirajuddin Haqqani and hundreds of thousands of others who went to these Haqqani madrasas were taught with these educational programs. So do you see that how this is an example of mathematics, counting all with guns, with revolvers, with bullets? These are type of education that were developed for the jihadi madrasas, and these jihadi madrasas were then implemented these textbooks within the borders of Afghanistan. And this is to give you a background that why Kaj was attacked, why University of Kabul, to which I will come, attacked, why so many schools were attacked, why 3,500 schools were destroyed during the 1980s. So these destruction, these brainwashing do not happen overnight. It's a long process that how graduates of these madrasas that today we call it sometimes Taliban, sometimes we call them Al-Qaeda, sometimes we call them Daesh, but generally they all are product of such an education system. In 2002, again, we see that the educational reconstruction textbooks were reformed in 2002. And again, the University of Nebraska at Omaha reforms the textbooks. So do you see earlier they have guns and bullets and knives, but in 2002, instead of guns, you have candles, glasses, pencils, all those things, and pens. Yes, we can reform, we can change a textbook, but we cannot change a nation's mentality who has been taught for decades religious radicalism. That cannot be redone, or we cannot bring to the default state. Is not a computer program, but it takes another or many more generations to come until we will bring everything back to normality. So that the attacks that on education happened during 2002 to 2022 is the product of such and many more versions of religious radicalism. Here's just, I'll give you only a few examples that in October 2020, that attack on Kausar Educational Institution in Dashti Barchi, district of western part of Kabul, claimed the lives of 24 people and wounded more than 57 students. In November 2020, Kabul University was attacked. In April 2022, two attacks happened, one on Abdurrahim Shahid High School, another one on Mumtaz Educational Center that cost the tens of lives. And of course, on September 2022, Kaj was attacked, the legacy of which we have seen and the stories we have seen and heard numerous times. But today, we had this opportunity to hear from Fatima Amiri herself. So this education in Afghanistan is under, we can say it under a kind of perpetual state of crisis and a perpetual state of attacks as well in Afghanistan. And it's a very sad story, but unfortunately, the situation, the way it is in Afghanistan is very disheartening. And this is Kabul University that was attacked during the last year of the Republic.
Sorry to interrupt you. You said this is Kabul University. Is there? Do you want to reshare your slide?
This one.
You just mentioned this is Kabul University, so I was wondering if you wanted to reshare, because right now you are not sharing the PowerPoint.
Ah, is it stopped?
Yes.
Oh, okay. From where the PowerPoint presentation was stopped?
A while back, actually. I hadn't thought to interrupt because you had mentioned that you were going to turn it off at times. So I'm not sure where you had wanted to turn it back on. I apologize.
Right. When I talked about jihad education, have you seen the slides?
No, we did not. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, so I'm not repeating what I said, but I'm just sharing this. Do you see now these slides?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll go back to some of the slides that I said earlier, that the way education was politicized and militarized for the madrasas, and these madrasas in Pakistan were admitting primarily, they were built primarily for refugees from Afghanistan. And these madrasas mushroomed in the tribal areas of Pakistan from a few thousand to 25,000 to 30,000 in the 1980s. So these are the type of textbooks and educational program that I referred earlier that the University of Nebraska at Omaha developed it with the support of the government of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states, and the jihadi parties in Afghanistan. So you see here the mathematics and you see that how children were taught counting, multiplying and all these things. And then when it comes to textbook reform in 2022, then we see again the University of Nebraska at Omaha coming to Afghanistan and reforming the textbooks. So earlier it was with guns and knives and Kalashnikov. Now it's with candles, glasses, pens, and fingers. So what I said, as I said earlier, one can change the textbook, but one cannot change as nation's mentality. One cannot change a generation's mentality that has gone through radical religious program. So attacks on education in Afghanistan that has been perpetually continuous since 1978. In the 1980s alone, there were about 3,500 schools were destroyed. Students and teachers were killed by both sides, by the government as well as by the jihadi parties. So the same happened throughout the past 20 years of republic in Afghanistan. And the attacks were, for example, in 2017, we had 67 attacks on schools. In 2018, it has been tripled, which grew to about 180 attacks. And here are just some examples that in October 2020, an attack on Kausar Educational Institution cost the life of 24 students and wounded another 57. Kabul University was attacked in November 2020, where 22 students were killed and another 22 were wounded. Abdurrahim Shahid High School, Mumtaz Educational Center, and also Kaj Educational Center claimed the lives of 54 students and wounded another 114. One of them is Fatima Amiri that spoke with us today. And I'm sure Fatima Amiri knows these students and these pictures, very well familiar with this. And this is the place where she was, and hundreds of other girls and boys were studying in Kabul. The lives of these students have basically broken the heart of the whole nation, the whole Afghanistan, and the whole world. I don't want to pause more on this because it's very, very sad story. And this is a 2022 attack on Kabul University. And so what happened that in the past 20 years, we saw a number of students quantitatively mushrooming from few thousands to 2 million students in 2002, 2003, and the number of female students were just next to nothing, almost zero, and 30% of these students were females. In 2018, 2019, the statistical figure shows 9.3 million, but given that there were so many ghost students and ghost schools, so we can probably say that around 7 million probably they were enrolled, but we don't say that they had access to quality education. Quality education was very limited to only urban areas and to private schools. So we had 250,000 teachers, 31% of which were female teachers. We had almost 16,000 schools, 700,000 other literacy learners, and out of which 420,000 were female students. What we have got today in Afghanistan, we have got Taliban, we have got Salafis, we have got Hizb ut-Tahrir, we have got Jamaat-e-Islam, we have got ISIS, we have got Al-Qaeda, and many other radical religious groups, and a sad situation for education, especially for girls. However, these religious radicalism were on the rise throughout the past 20 years, but for whatever reason, it was neither tackled nor stopped, but it was left on its own to grow and mushroom. So this is an example of Nangarhar University, so that so many times the Taliban and Daesh have staged protest against the government and against the education system. So again, you see this is during the time of the Republic that the students in universities carry on the flag of Taliban and together with other religious radical groups. So what happened, what brought Taliban back to power, why we are at the situation that we are in today is the narrative that we have moderate Taliban against radical Taliban. So these moderate Taliban were given the political stage up to February 2020, when the US signed a peace deal with the Taliban. And so you see the US Secretary of State, George Pompeo, with Mullah Baradar, and here you see the same moderate Taliban is in the presidential palace, and we see that situation of the Taliban favorite educational dress probably for the girls. So this is a picture of 2021, November 2021, at the former Burhanuddin Shahid Education University. It was just a brief and quick kind of presentation on how education in Afghanistan has been under attack from numerous sides. When we talk about education under attack, we should not limit our view of attack on the physical destruction of schools, but attack also means comes in many forms. It's lack of access to education, it's inequalities in terms of gender, in terms of social class, in terms of geographical location, but also it's in terms of curriculum, in terms of textbooks and narratives that in these textbooks are presented to students and to school children. And it's often the school and teachers have been physically, of course, have been subject to targets on multiple levels. And it's also a very tragic situation that the purpose of education is to nourish a nation and to help a nation to develop its economies, its infrastructure, and bring more enlightenment. But unfortunately, the very purpose of education in Afghanistan has been undermined or ignored over the years. And the question that we can ask is that why would anyone seek to dismantle the very foundation upon which brighter future are built? And we know that the world is not silent. What happens in Afghanistan, Global Campus of Human Rights is one of those institutions that is deeply involved in the field of education in Afghanistan, and within its own limited capacity is doing its best to help education in Afghanistan, to help students and scholars from Afghanistan who are under threat to come out from the country and continue in one form or another their educational persuasions. And we hope that the world will unite about education in Afghanistan, about freedom in Afghanistan, and about bringing positive change back in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very, very impressive, and also, both in depth, but in a short way. There was a lot there that definitely I was unaware of, but I think a few takeaways that I get from that, some which I knew before and some I didn't, but seeing the giant increase of numbers of students, teachers, and from both male and female during that time period of 2001 to 2021. And then of course now most of that has dropped off again, is such a staggering number, especially when you see it in front of you, that number. And of course you can't fake data that's true. You know, there was this enormous increase and stopped. But your final perplexing thought that you left us with is that's especially one of the most frustrating factors for me, and I'm sure it is, of course, for anyone who is from Afghanistan. Of course, I'm not, so I've not experienced it myself, but I am a former teacher. I'm a former educator. I was a classroom teacher for almost 10 years. And yes, the thought of destroying the thing that can help a nation, help an economy, help everyone, both personally and for the greater good, is exactly, perplexing is the best word for that. And so it's something that, no, it does not make sense in any sense of the word. But it is, yes, it's something hopefully can change and be fixed, which of course is a whole other question and debate, which we don't have time for. But at this time, we can open up the floor. We have about 20 to 25 minutes to have a general discussion and questions for our speakers. I will say, if anyone does have any questions specifically for Ms. Fatima Amiri, please be very conscious of your question, knowing the sensitive nature of what she has been through. So I will say that. I will unpin myself so I can see. If anyone does have any questions, it would be very helpful if you could use the raise hand function in Zoom. If not, if anyone does have any issues with the Zoom, sometimes I know there are issues, you are welcome to put it into the chat, and hopefully we will see it and not miss it. And I do see we have one right away from Rafael Eliassi. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a women rights activist from Iran, and thank you so much for this workshop, let's say, to learn more about what is going on. But the thing is that experiencing the situation in Iran after the Islamic Revolution happened, that young people deprived from going to universities for 4 years, totally changed the generation of the 80s kids in the Iran. And this is something that is happening in Afghanistan, and already 2 years passed. So what is the main important things that I'm questioning it should be done for the Afghani women, especially because this generation is losing their chances? Thank you.
Before we go ahead and answer that, I think that also connects. We do have a message in the chat, and I from Agale Mohammadi, and I will also apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. Of course, there are many names here I'm not familiar with, so I do apologize in advance. And connecting to this question here a little bit is, the general, which I think will come up later. What can we do for girls and girls' education in Afghanistan? So we do have two things that connect there. I think let's try to have one more question before we turn back to the speakers. So to avoid a lot of back and forth, do we have any other questions at this time? And if they're not, we can hand it over to the speakers. Okay, well then at this time, I will, I guess, first turn to Dr. Baiza, if you can give your thoughts on these two ideas.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arifa Ilyasi. There is also a question in the chat room from Aghela Mohammadi asking what to do for girls' education in Afghanistan. So that both questions are similar. when you look at the situation in Afghanistan, education reflects the political situation in Afghanistan. If we want to have sustainability in education, which is very important, and we never had it in the history of education in Afghanistan, right from the time of Amanullah onwards. So every regime, every state tried to undo everything that the previous state was doing. So the lack of stability in the government and lack of stability in the state itself is a major issue in Afghanistan. If you want to help education in Afghanistan, the most important is sustainability, and sustainability does not come without sustainability in the political system. We have every 14 years the time of the leftist government. We had 4 years the time of the Islamic State. We had 5 years the Taliban. We had 20 years the Republic, and now we have 2 years of the Taliban. So we see every time everything is undone. So this is a major threat. Even if today we bring the most suitable formula for education in Afghanistan, that would be only temporary. So the most important factor is that there should be a political stability, and Afghanistan cannot have political stability unless the country's political system is clear with its own national strategies, with its own ethnic, cultural composition, and does not have a clear strategy for its neighbors and at the international level. So unfortunately, that's the situation in Afghanistan. And as an immediate point, I can tell you, and I can tell everybody, that the major threat for Afghanistan at the moment is not the Taliban itself. The Taliban, the administration, is not a major threat. The major threat is the Taliban ideology, Taliban way of thinking that spreading across thousands of madrasas, in Afghanistan. These madrasas that produce Taliban were there before the leftist revolution in 1978. They have been throughout the past 20 years, and they will be there in the future as well. So the biggest threat to Afghanistan education, to girls in Afghanistan, is these madrasas. As long as these madrasas teach religious radicalism, there won't be a time when girls will feel safe. Shias, let us say, will feel safe. Hindus will feel safe, or Sunnis will feel safe, because what we have a very radical agenda in these madrasas that doesn't care about what is your religious belief, what is your ethnicity, or what's your gender. Anything that does not suit their version of religion or their interpretation of religion, that's called as a part of infidel, and that's the biggest threat. So to fight these madrasas would be the major challenge and task ahead of people in Afghanistan.
Wow, yes, I think, no, I saw, for those who have their cameras on, I saw a lot of heads nodding when you were mentioning that it's not, the Taliban government that is a threat, it's the ideology, I'm sorry. And I think there was a lot of agreement in the room with the wording you just chose there. Just seeing the reaction from some. Is there anything you would like to say specifically on the idea of how we can help girls or girls' education in Afghanistan, Miss Amiri? Fatima?
Right now, one thing that is very important and helpful, it's online classes. I know that internet is in Afghanistan is not very good, but right now we don't have any other way. It's very good to classes online and scholarships for Afghan girls. You know that such scholarships and programs, no one need more than Afghan girls. Afghan girls need scholarships, and they should don't be hopeless, and they should study in their homes, and they should don't give up. If they become calm in their homes and they didn't study anymore, it's mean that Taliban's won, and it's very bad. But two things that I think that it's really important and hopeful right now. One is online classes, and another is scholarships, because right now we don't have any other way. In Afghanistan, they can't do anything. They can't go to school, university, and it's right now I don't know any other way. Only two things is good.
No, and those make sense. I see we have a question from Alicina. Please go ahead. You are still muted.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for making this wonderful program happen. First of all, once again, I want to extend my condolence for the tragic of car attack, and definitely denounce this evil attack. Maybe the souls of the victims find internal peace. Also, I take this immense pride in acknowledging the presence of our very brave, very stronger, dearest Fatima. It's great pleasure to have you in here. And secondly, the spreading of extremist ideology. It's far serious issue, because I think so. Suppose students can go to school if they even let the doors open for girls to go, but things that they have studied, just sir, you have shown some pictures of the books. I still remember those books. We had those books in our home. Yeah, in Afghanistan, I still remember those pictures. But fortunately, my father was teaching us, myself and my sister. He was teaching us different things, and he was telling us that this is wrong. But the generation who have been fighting in Afghanistan, they all studied those books, and now I think Taliban are working systematically on education system in Afghanistan. I can give you some yesterday I was just searching for just madrasas in Afghanistan, and how Taliban are working on educational system in Afghanistan. And last year, the Taliban publicly announced their ambitious plan to establish 3 to 10 religious madrasas in every district of Afghanistan. It's like a ticking bomb, not only for Afghanistan, not only for the region, but for the whole world. Furthermore, after the Taliban, after they came to power, they transformed a well-equipped educational institution in host city, which had library and computer lab, to a madrasa, and also displaced almost 6,000 students and 103 teachers in this process. And also I think every teacher training centers, and they are training new teachers. So suppose in the future, like one generation, the next generation of Afghanistan, suppose we have, like, for example, we might have like 10,000 extremist fighters in Afghanistan for now. There's a small group who are controlling Afghanistan, but the future of Afghanistan, you will face a nation of extremist fighters, I can say. I believe I want to just add this. I put some emphasis on this issue. This is very important, and I think we should have more programs, especially about this issue, and also find a solution, because It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alessina. And before we discuss this a little bit, let's take either the question or comment from Mohammed Asif.
Hi everyone. I want to thank Dr. Baiza for his presentation and providing us with the historical background of these current violations against girls and women in our country. My question is, what are possible quick impact solutions to address these barriers related to lack of access, inequality, and physical threats? And how do you see the future of these of the current situation? There will be changes, or what do you think? Thank you.
Taking on the question, or you want to ask?
It looks like there are no other questions at the moment. So yes, why don't you go ahead and take the question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Dost Mohammed Asif. We have to remember one thing, that what's happening in Afghanistan right now is not the result of today. What we are seeing today is the result of the past many decades that have been accumulated for us. So the country as a whole, political leaders, religious and tribal chiefs, the educated elite, you just name it, including civil society organization. I'm not saying that categorically that every single one of them, but I can tell you that the absolute majority of them, the country as a nation, we did not do our homework. We did not look and we did not understand the threats of political decisions that have been made in our behalf, in our name. So if you want to change today's situation, you cannot change. I'm very, very sorry. We cannot change what's happening right now in Afghanistan, but we can change the future. We can change the future, but we cannot change today, but we can change the future. We have to work for the future. We have to recognize that what is in Afghanistan right now is not in the benefit of any ethnicity, is not in the benefit of any religious group, and is not in the benefit of anyone in Afghanistan. The situation in Afghanistan will change anyway. It will change. But the question is that how we want to change the country in the future, and how far we want to go with the change in the future. So my answer to that is that there's somebody's microphone, loudspeaker is on. I think it echoes to me back as well. Thank you. For me, in my view, more violence is not bringing peace in Afghanistan. If the war would brought peace in Afghanistan, the Soviet Union were there with their entire military might. We have seen 25 countries, including NATO, ISAF, International Security Assistance Forces in Afghanistan. We even have seen the mother of bombs that was dropped in the country. So what else you can expect in this country to happen through war? So violence is not the answer to the situation in Afghanistan. We have to admit and we have to accept that this bitter reality is the product of our own ignorance or the issues that we have ignored. We have to work with that. There is no other way. We have to work systematically, and we have to work in a way that we bring changes in our families, in our immediate relatives circles. And we have to have a program for depoliticize and demilitarize these madrasas. To do that, we need to bring a new interpretation of religion, a new interpretation of Islam. Islam is not under any type of threats, and nobody is against the religion of Islam. But we have to change this narrative, and we have to work together to make sure that these madrasas are the way they are teaching and the curriculum they are teaching now have to be stopped. There is no other way. But there is I can see a bright future, but through a very, very difficult time. The time will be very difficult, unfortunately, but we have to work hard for the future. And we have to admit that it was the people of Afghanistan who are primarily responsible for what has happened in Afghanistan, while the international forces, international powers, whether that was United States or whether it was Soviet Union, Pakistan, Iran, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, who you name it, China maybe now or in the future. Yes, they all have played a role and they do play a role, but we have to accept responsibility. Unless we do not accept responsibility, we won't be able to bring a sustainable change in the future.
That was a very in-depth answer. We do have time for one, maybe two more questions if anyone would like to ask now. Yes, Maria El Chili. Please go ahead.
I am trying to unmute myself. I hope I'm unmuted.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for organizing this event. I'm Maria El Chili, a research fellow at the Max Planck Foundation. I'm really grateful to Yahia. We have been really partnering in organizing a number of events, which I can speak for Julia, I hope, will help us bring in more visibility to this issue that we are discussing. And this is half of a question and half of an advertisement. We will be conducting on the 26th of October an event on digital education in Afghanistan. And I will leave in the chat my email for all those of you who would like to attend. And here comes the question. The question for both speakers is, where do you see digital education, distance learning as a tool to address some of the incredible difficulties that you have spoken about in the course of today's event? From the little experience I have, and I've read that there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages, and I would be extremely grateful to hear your point of view on distance learning. Thank you so much.
Fatima wants to go first, or shall I go first? I don't mind. Just I don't want to talk all the time. To have a bit of change of voice.
Fatima, why don't you say a word or two on your thoughts? I know you mentioned a little earlier about the hope for more online learning. Do you have any other thoughts about remote and distance learning?
Yeah, I can't understand completely, but I think she said about how we can help Afghan girls with education, with with online classes. Or okay.
Yes.
If it's okay, Julia, I can elaborate a little bit on my question.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So I guess my biggest concern is that education, from what I read from the international standards, is not just the acquisition of knowledge, right? It is much more than that. It is the ability to interact with other people. It is the ability to develop critical thought. It is the ability to share feelings, emotion, etc. And the concern I'm having with digital education is that a lot of these things are very hard to achieve with the online. And this is just one part. I also have heard that there are a lot of challenges, much more practical than this perhaps romantic or philosophical idea of mine, like the absence of available internet and electricity and tablets and computer, right, in remote areas. On the other hand, you do have a lot of advantages, especially when there is no other alternative. So this is just a little bit of elaboration of where I was heading, and I would be really happy to hear if you see also challenges, if you see many more advantages than challenges. Thank you.
But right now we don't have any other way. Online class is the only thing that we Afghan girls right now have. They don't have any other way. They can't go with I mean they can't have lesson with teacher, with class, really they can't have. But online class is only thing that we have. Online classes is better than nothing. You know, if we don't have online classes, Afghan girls should be don't have any other way. They can't have education. I speak with them. I have related with them. A lot of all time I speak. They call me. They message me that we don't have anything to do. But right now, I think online classes is very useful because they are always there in home. They can use it very well. But when they don't have a class to go, school, education center, university, it's better instead of nothing. When they can't have this online classes, they should be completely destroyed. You know, all of them are right now, more girls in Afghanistan have to marry because they don't have any education. But it's was my opinion only because of instead of nothing. But if be another opinion better than this, I agree. But one second thing that is very good, please help Afghan girls to give scholarships, because I'm sure that no one need like scholarship more than anyone else. But one big problems that it's with scholarships, that Afghan girls can't go abroad alone. They need a man, like their father, their maybe husband, their brother. It's very hard, but they find a way, like they are going near country. After that, they can go their scholarship or their education. But one thing that is better, I think online classes is good. Not great, it's good. You know, internet is also not very good in Afghanistan. They don't have enough facilities. They don't have economic situation to have internet. Some of them that have internet, they connection is not very good. But I don't know. It's very, very tough situation. It's very difficult situation.
And before I turn it over to Dr. Baiza for a very quick reaction to Maria's question, one thing I definitely can understand very much, because it's been a lot of my work the past 2 years, is the difficulty of the relocation and the travel and the visa. So I very much understand what you just said there. So yes, if I can ask Dr. Baiza for his quick reaction, maybe under 2 minutes or so, and then we will close up.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to talk much about it. I left 2 articles with regard to the question. One is, I left them, both of them in the chat, so you can download it. Well, we have to, when we want to embrace a new kind of start for education in Afghanistan, we really need to look into a new philosophy for education and a new curriculum for education. What we have had always, what we call in the field of education, planned curriculum. But what we never had it was a lived curriculum. We never had lived education. And so that's why I think we need to look into that, how we can make education in Afghanistan lived education, because education must live with different cohort of society, with different ethnicities, with different religious groups and cultural groups. So in education in Afghanistan, because it was a planned curriculum from top down, I can tell you my experience. I never heard about what was the religious rights and what matters were important for our Hindu and Sikh communities, for example. I never learned that we had the Jews in Afghanistan. We never learned that we had Christians earlier in Afghanistan. We never learned about such great figures in the history of knowledge in Afghanistan, like Avicenna, like Nasr Khisraw. I can tell you, I've never heard about Nasr Khisraw, the greatest travelogue and scientist and philosopher in Afghanistan. Similarly, about many others. So we need to have a lived curriculum in Afghanistan in order to bring this critical thinking, bring this diversity, bring this pluralism. Afghanistan is a mosaic-rich country in terms of ethnicity, culture, language, religious beliefs, but this diversity has always been seen as a source of threat and weakness, but not as a source of strength. So we need to celebrate this diversity, and we need to manage it and to elevate it to the level of pluralism. And that's what I mean when we talk about pluralism and all these things. That's what I mean, lived education, an education that is living with the people and people live with the education. Thank you.
Well, with that wonderful closing thought of, we need to celebrate the diversity, I think that is a very good moment to close on. With just a few notes, and I do see a few questions are now popped up into the chat, and we unfortunately need to close. I will just say a few closing remarks, and with that, I will put something in the background in honor, of course, of the first part of this session. This was a memorial that was done by our European students, some of which are here in this workshop, last year in honor of course, the attack. I do want to thank everyone for attending today. If you attended, you will also get more information about our next session. And apologies if you get more than one email, because you will get one for being a participant today, as well as if you got an email through one of the other networks, whether being a student, an alum, one of the scholarship recipients, or through one of our other networks. Our next session is on the 3rd of November, also a Friday. Our plan is to have it the first Friday of every month, unless there is a holiday for some reason. At the same time, from 3 to 4:30 Central European Time, Italy time. And the topic will be about art, or the restriction of. We have not fully determined the speakers and agenda, but of course, more information will come later on for that. And with that, I again thank you for attending our first inaugural session of our monthly speaker series. And again, an extra thank you to Dr. Baiza, and of course to Ms. Fatima Miri. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia, and thank you, everyone.